What's up, fight fans? This is the Fights Tonight podcast. I am Travis Polhamius here with my co-host Luis Romero. Luis, what's up?
What's up, Travis? How you doing?
Pretty good, bro. Another
Pre-
good night of betting.
Yeah.
So we'll get off to a good start on the next one here.
Hey, there we go. I'm gonna post the pictures of how well you did last night later on. But if you want, you can tell them.
Yeah, I had a good parlay mixing Oleksiejczuk winning by knockout on the MMA card, and then Virgil Ortiz Jr. winning by KO or TKO on the boxing card, which was a little bit more than double my money. Had another one where I almost got double in a 3-leg parlay, and even had a 5-leg parlay. I got worried and cashed out after 4 of them, but I still would have gotten them all right. The last one I had was the main event of the UFC card, not going the distance. So if
Yeah,
I
you
stick with this system, keep betting a little bit more and a little bit more, but not everything. That way I don't take a chance on losing it all. It's a good
right.
chance we'll have some good money here in a few months.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me last night. I'll also post that, but I bet a lot of money on Thiago. But he looked really good too. He dominated. I think it was the third. Was it the third round
Yeah,
or second
yeah.
round? And then after that, it seemed like he gassed himself out and kind of let Hall knock him out.
Yeah, kind of an example of like a guy that probably could have won, but just, it's like we always say, like when you have a fight, like how do you choose how you're going to fight? Like, do you
Right.
want to back up? Do you go forward? At what point do you change it? Do you start going for takedowns? It's a good example where like he shot all those takedowns and easily won the third round, but got so tired
Yeah.
he couldn't fight the last 2 rounds.
Yeah. He shot. I don't even know how many. It was like six or seven that were successful. Might have shot a few more that didn't get him down, but Hall was really quick to get back up to his feet a lot of those times. So I think that's where
Yeah,
he really exhausted himself. He wasn't expecting that. I think he was expecting to hold him down a little bit longer.
yeah, and Jamal Hill, even though not much of a grappler, like he was doing pretty good on defense, and like he was getting really tired too. I just think
Yeah.
him playing defense and then him being the one coming forward in the kickboxing really saved his cardio to where he had enough left.
Right. You know who did have a lot of cardio? Vincente Luque. He looked good out there,
Yeah,
but he wasn't really moving his head. I hear people talking and telling me how tough he is, which really showed last night. And it was crazy that he got knocked out there at the end.
yeah, I think that's the first time that he's been stopped.
Yeah. Well, what was the guy that fought him? Neil?
Jeff Neal,
Jeff
yeah.
Neal? Yeah. That was he looked good out there too. Being ranked, what was it, like number 11 and fighting at number 6?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and oddly enough, it was the same with the main event. Santos was ranked number 6, and Jamal Hill was only like 10 or 11. So
Yeah.
both guys are going to move up really nicely into that top 10. Should get
That's
some good matchups.
that's good, man. Who do we have fighting this weekend?
Well, the main event is a couple of my personal favorites at 135. We got Marlon Cheeto Vera. He's the one that beat O'Malley, then lost to Jose Aldo, and then his last fight had that really good win over Rob Font, where Font was looking good, but Cheeto he starts off slow, but then he starts building, and he had really damaged Font really bad with the swelling and stuff. However, he's got to go up against another former champion. This time, instead of Jose Aldo, it's Dominick Cruz. And Cruz, of course, lost that title shot to Cejudo, but then came back and had a very impressive performance over the southpaw Casey Kenny. So that'll be an interesting one for the main event. We'll break that one down a little more. Other than that, I will say this card being a fight night right before a pay-per-view is a little light on big names, but
Right.
we'll break it down here, see what we can get. We've got to start us off. We've got Yusufzal, 10-5 versus the 12-4 Damon Blackshear. Blackshear, I believe, is making his UFC debut. I think he trains at Greg Jackson's gym. Zalal's been in the UFC a little bit longer, is pretty quick, agile guy, but he can be a little hit and miss. I believe he's the favorite on this one, but this is definitely one where I'm leaning towards him, but I'd be careful betting on it just with looking at over the guys' records and stuff like that. It brings us to a flyweight bout with Ode Osborne versus Tyson Nam. Ode Osborne was really looking good. Fights out of Africa, was kind of getting a good streak put together, and then ran into Manel Cape and got caught with a flying knee, I believe it was early. Tyson Nam been around the UFC a little bit longer. Had some problems being sidelined with injuries and stuff. This is one of those ones that Ode I think is maybe a little bit more explosive, a little bit slicker, but Nam's got a lot of experience on his hands. So another one this is one of those ones that you just want to stay away from on the betting. Either guy could win. It could go the distance. It could be a quick knockout. Those are always the ones I hate trying to bet on. Next up, that brings us to Charlie Ontiveros, 11-8, versus Gabriel Benitez. Benitez is 22-11 and I want to say he's lost like 3 of his last 4 or something by knockout. Despite that, I really like his style. He fights out of AKA, where Khabib and Cormier and all those guys were. So he's got some decent takedown defense. He's a real slick kickboxer. He's a southpaw, got real good power in his left kick, really good left knee, some good punches. Ontiveros is a little bit newer to the UFC, so this is one that I'm going to lean towards Benitez on.
Okay.
But he does kind of have a Schnell thing about him, where it's like you see him and he looks really good, and somehow it's just like he'll be winning a fight and then all of a sudden he loses. He'll just get caught with a shot or something. But this is the first guy I'm looking at putting on a parlay will be Benitez, and regardless of outcome, it should definitely be an exciting fight. He's a guy that always brings it, always throwing hard. Javier, the guy that's the head kickboxing trainer at AKA, where Khabib and Islam Makhachev and all those guys are, says that Benitez has got the hardest body kick he's ever felt. And when he throws, you can definitely hear it. So if you're a right-handed guy, you definitely got to keep that elbow down a little bit, because he gets in one of those body kicks or one of those knees, it could be real trouble. That brings us to a heavyweight bout between Martin Buday and Lucas Brzeski. Both guys only have 1 loss. Martin's got a couple more wins. Lucas does also have a draw and a no contest. Like some of the guys on the card last night, one of which was the reason that fight got pulled, Lucas Brzeski has had problems with the drug test before. I believe it was after the Contender Series. He got busted for one of those clomiphene or dranafines, or one of those ones that's like a hormone thing that usually people take when they're off their steroid cycle. So we'll hope that his problems are behind him and this fight doesn't get scratched.
A lot of people be getting caught for that, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple people on this card actually that have had this problem. Kind of weird to see that so much, but he's done his suspension and paid the fine. From what I could tell, Martin was a little bit more impressive. Even though these guys, I believe, are coming off the Contender Series, they're both making their debut, so that makes it kind of hard to know who to go with. They do have Martin as a favorite. Obviously, they said the same thing about Pauga last night, and then he got beat by Usman. I am leaning towards Martin Buday on this one, but another one where both guys are so early into their career and kind of untested and stuff, to where this isn't one I would put too much money on or make it a point to put on all my parlays or anything. That brings us with our final fight on the prelims, which is a catchweight. I'm going to assume that that's going to be at 120 maybe, because I know Hill usually fights at 115. Her record is 13-12, but she's one of those people that's been either in Invicta or the UFC basically her entire career. She's on the Ultimate Fighter, so all of her losses, you'll see a lot of big names on there along with her wins.
Wow, that's a
Uh,
lot of losses, bro. That's like win one, lose
yeah,
one, win one, lose one.
true, true. But, a lot of people like Nate Diaz and a lot of guys like, if you go to the UFC in your first few fights, there's a lot of times like your record is going to look like that.
Right.
Whereas it's a little easier to get to 10-0, 15-0 if you're fighting regionally and stuff. Hill also trains with Dominick Cruz, who's in the main event.
Okay.
I will say Lupita Godinez, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is really highly ranked for not being in the UFC. And I realize that's easier at 125 just because there's not a lot of contenders for Valentina. She came up in the Combate Americas circuit where a lot of the Mexican fighters do,
Hmm.
and had a pretty good record with a lot of impressive wins and stuff. This is another one where it's like, her record's better, but this is like her first big fight in the UFC. And Hill, even though it's hit and miss, has got a lot more experience and has had a really good gym and stuff. This is one I I think I'm gonna lean towards the newcomer in Godinez on this one, but it might be safer just to place a bet on it going the over, especially if they have your over at 1.5 instead of 2.5. Not a weight class that you see too many finishes in, but curious to see what we see from these two. Hill also getting up there in age. He's been doing a lot of commentating lately, and I notice once fighters start doing that, they tend to be on the back end of their career. So we'll
Yeah.
see what we get.
I wonder, do you know who she's commentating for? Is it the
Um,
UFC or is it Invicta?
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Huh.
yeah. Not all the time. Like
Right.
like some smaller stuff. And I saw her. She was with Kelvin Cater and Marvin Vittori in one of the new Venom commercials for the new fight gear and stuff.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Um,
Her and Dominic Cruz, they trained at the same gym and they both commentate a little bit.
yeah, yeah, and she is really smart too, and like good at breaking stuff down. And obviously, being with somebody like Cruz for years is gonna help that along
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Um, a fight that was supposed to be on the main card, I noticed it's still on the betting sites, but from what I can tell, it's been canceled. And that's the Alexa Grasso versus Viviana Rujo.
You know,
That's one that was going to be pretty close. I was going to lean towards a Rujo, but my thing has it as being canceled. So
you
I don't know what's going on with that.
I think I know. I think that spot got filled, bro. I think Lipsky, I forget her first name. My wife from the last week's fights. She's
Yeah.
supposed to fight on this card too, and I ain't seen her name on it. So I bet you that's who she's fighting is
Yeah,
Alexa
that's the
Grasso.
weird. Yeah, that's the weird thing is when you're a week out, like the betting sites will still have fights that are like already been canceled, and then there's fights that are on the main card that they don't even have on there. It's kind of strange. I couldn't get the odds for all of these, but we'll see what happens. If it does end up being Grasso versus Lipsky, that's another one that's kind of really close. One I'd probably stay away from unless you really have a favorite or you really think it's going to go the over. If you are going to bet on it, maybe just going past the halfway point would be the safe one. Um, the first one that we know we have on this card is Bruno Silva versus Gerald Meerschaert. Both guys kind of have had a bit of a tough road. Bruno Silva had a really impressive win streak of finishes he had put together, and then had to fight Alex Pereira, which was
Ooh.
obviously not an easy feat. He did make it the distance, which I was really impressed with. And even with getting hit with that left hook, he seemed like his defense was really good. And even though he lost, it was really impressive. He was able to hang in there with a guy like Pereira on the feet most of the time.
Man.
Then Gerald Meerschaert, of course, kind of a middle of the road middleweight, and he got that fight against Khamzat Chimaev when he was doing the fights up at middleweight, and he got knocked out in like 15 seconds or something like that. So both guys kind of been on the wrong end of being fed to a prospect. That being said, Mearshart is a little bit more of a middle of the road guy. He is a good grappler. Had 3 fights, won them all by submission in 2021, but outside of that is a bit hit and miss. Bruno Silva, pretty well rounded, and I definitely gained a lot of respect for his stand up, and you can see why he's gotten so many knockouts, being able to hang in there with a glory champ like Pereira. This is one that they do have Bruno as the favorite, and I do agree with that one. So Bruno's another guy I'm looking to stick on my parlay here. That brings us to Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunes, the wife of Amanda Nunes. She's also kind of hit a bit of a rough streak, had to take some time off for the pregnancy.
Right.
This is a fight that was supposed to happen a while ago, but got canceled and got rescheduled. Calvillo's pretty good. She's a bit like the other women flyweights, Grasso and Rujo and Lipsky, where they're kind of hit and miss. I do think that Calvillo gets this done, but it's another one that I wouldn't put too much money on. I think it's one I may add to a bigger parlay, just taking the over on it. It brings us to a light heavyweight bout between Devin Clark and Azamat Murzakanov. Hope I'm saying that last name right. He's undefeated at 11-0. He's got, I believe, 1 fight in the UFC and 1 on the Contender Series. Won both of them. Had a pretty impressive knee, considering he's a little bit more of a grappler. Devin Clark, a bit hit and miss. Obviously, not undefeated at 13-6, but he's been in the UFC for almost 6 years now, and has had a lot of tough fights. Even went up to heavyweight in his last fight and got a win. But before that, he was fighting the Jan Blachowicz and guys that ended up either being a champ or fighting for the belt. So he's a tough test when you've only got 1 fight. I do think Azamat is supposed to win this fight. I just wonder, with Clark having twice the fights and being in the UFC for 6 years as opposed to 6 months, I wonder if that gives Azamat a problem. But I am going to be adding Azamat to my parlay as well. Brings us to the final female fight of the night. Yasmin Uruguay versus... I'm not sure on this other one. It might be another Yasmin, actually, if they're pronouncing it with a Y like they do in Spanish.
I think that's exactly what it is, bro.
Okay, well, we've got Yasmin versus Yasmin. 8-0 versus 13-4. Looked them up. I believe these are both also a couple of newcomers. Lucindo might have had 1 fight. Both girls, again, had pretty impressive records. I'm going to lean towards
Yasmin.
Yasmin. Yeah, for sure I'm going to lean towards Yasmin on this one.
Sounds like a sure win, bro.
Yeah, and that would be the undefeated Yasmin Uruguay, but Lucindo had some impressive stuff on her record too. So another one I would maybe keep off any parlays that you're putting extra money on or anything like that, just with them being kind of unknown. I would expect it to be a good fight, though, with them being relative unknowns and them being put on the main card, whereas Angela Hill, who's had a bunch of fights, is on the prelims. That brings us to the co-main event. David Onama, who I lost some money on last time. I bet on him to get the finish by knockout, and he ended up getting a submission. But he is really explosive, has real good power, 10-1, and is looking to do some big things at 145. However, he's fighting one of my personal favorites, Nate the Train Landwehr. And Nate the Train had a bit of a tough time once he got to the UFC. Got knocked out in his first few fights, and then won the last one. He did get a lot of eyes on him on Twitter because he was yelling at Dana White while he was fighting.
Oh, he pulled Islam, huh? Or was that Kamzat?
Yeah, more of a Kamzat.
Yeah.
He's from down south somewhere, Louisiana or Mississippi. Real entertaining on the microphone. He was the M1 Global Champion, which is the biggest MMA promotion in Russia.
You know,
and had some really tough fights.
I feel like they bring a lot of those M1 champions over here to the UFC. You know,
Yeah,
I
and a
can't
lot
remember
of
their
them do
names,
good.
but I know there's a few bantamweights, and yeah, I forget their names.
Yeah, what's weird is that they're usually Russian, whereas
Yeah.
Landwehr was like one of the few guys to come from America, go over to M1, get the belt, defend it a few times, and get to the UFC that way. The reason he gets knocked out is the reason he's so exciting is that he's just really wild. Like he starts coming at you and yelling and throwing huge shots. So he definitely kind of leaves himself open. I'm kind of hoping he's going to play it a little bit safer against Onama, just with Onama having such power and having so many finishes. Part of me hopes Nate wins just to hear another one of his post-fight interviews, which are always good. Um, this is one that I don't know. I think Landwehr has faced a higher level of competition, but like I say, he's wild, been knocked out a couple times since he's came to the UFC. Onama is good, but a bit untested. This is one that might be good to put on the parlay on it not going the distance and maybe not pick a winner. But anybody that isn't familiar with Nate Landwehr, definitely go and watch a highlight of him just to see the stuff he would say to these full Russian crowds. Was really hilarious. He had one where he made up a song after the fight and beats this Russian guy that's like the hometown favorite, and then gets the microphone and goes, that's an ass kicking.
That's
Now
an
that's
ass
what I
kicking.
call an ass kicking. Yeah, it was fucking hilarious. So definitely a dude that like could get really famous if he could just stop getting knocked out by swinging like a wild man. So hopefully Nate can be a little bit more technical and come away with the win because he is good. I mean, he wouldn't have beat all those Russian champs if he wasn't. Really
Right.
tough guy, really durable, really good cardio, pretty good wrestler. Like I say, he just gets a little wild, kind of like Luke and Nate. He kind of relies on that toughness a little too much sometimes. Um, and that'll bring us to the final fight of the night, the main event. Marlon Vera, 19-7-1 versus Dominick the Dominator Cruz, 24-3. Marlon Vera, of course, was going right up the ranks after the O'Malley fight, lost to Jose Aldo, but looked good. Then came back and had an impressive fight against Rob Font, who's another guy that was looking to move up the ranks after beating Cody Garbrandt. Dominick Cruz, of course, longtime WEC and then UFC bantamweight champion, has wins over TJ Dillashaw. Lost the fight to Cody Garbrandt, was out with injuries for a good bit, came right back into a title shot against Cejudo, was looking good, and then went to throw a punch and duck and got caught with a knee.
That was
Cejudo was thrown up.
a
Go ahead.
controversial knockout, right? That was one where he kind of said, you know,
Yeah.
he stopped too early.
Yeah. Yeah, and to his credit, Cruz is one of those guys that's like Luke, where he just is really tough and
Yep.
keeps fighting back. So I would have liked to see him get a little bit more of a chance. That, and even though he got dropped with a knee, Cejudo was trying to throw a body kick, and just the way Cruz threw a punch and went to duck out the side, he ended up getting hit with the knee. So it wasn't even like Cejudo meant to knee him. So it was kind of a weird one. Cruz did come right back off that and fight Casey Kenny, who's a really good bantamweight southpaw that was moving up the ranks. Kind of had a tough first round and then outpointed him well. He also had a good fight against Pedro Munoz, where Cruz got dropped a couple times in the first round and then found a way to come back and win the last two. What makes this fight interesting is that Marlon Vera is a guy that usually loses the first round and then gets a finish towards the end where he starts kind of putting on the pressure and throwing a little bit harder. Cruz is a guy that's known for winning decisions. A lot of times he might lose the first or the second, but he finds enough adjustments and what stance to fight out of and ends up taking a decision. Even a couple of them, like the Dillashaw fight, Cruz got ahead on the scorecards early, and even though Dillashaw was doing good later on, it wasn't enough for him to take the decision. So kind of the opposite of what Cruz had versus Munoz, where he got hurt early. What I see happening is I see Vera starting slow like he normally does. I think Cruz is going to be bouncing around with that footwork and is going to take the first couple of rounds. Then Vera is going to start getting back into it late. That's where it's going to get weird.
Weird.
What's either going to happen is Vera's either not going to be able to catch up and Cruz is going to be able to take 3 or 4 of those 5 rounds, or once Cruz is blown off a little steam 15, 20 minutes in, and Chito Vera gets past that starting slow thing and starts throwing those front kicks and like he knocked out Edgar with, and some of the knees to the body that he throws and stuff could be a problem and could catch Cruz and maybe get a late finish. I could see Vera maybe able to steal the 3rd, 4th, and 5th and getting a decision, but this is one that I think either Cruz wins on points or Vera wins with a finish. The cool thing is, by Cruz being the underdog here at a plus 160, I've got to imagine for him to win on points, if you picked that, it would probably be a plus 200. And so what I'm thinking about doing is putting a separate bet on Cruz to win on points, and then maybe on the parlay having one where Vera wins and one where he wins by finish, which should make up for him being the favorite a little bit. So one of those ones I'm a little bit torn on, but the odds are so wide that I think there's a way we can do it and kind of make money either way. I got to say, the last couple times I bet on Cruz versus Casey Kenny and versus Pedro Munoz, he was the underdog both times and still won. He was the longtime champion for a reason. So we'll see what happens. I mean, he's got 3 losses. One was to Uriah Faber in like 2008. One was against Cody Garbrandt in 2016, where Dom's knees were falling apart. And the only other loss he had was the controversial one to Henry Cejudo, who was the double champ. So not an easy guy to beat, even though he's getting older and had a lot of injuries and stuff. So I don't know if I'll put him on all my parlays, but I'll definitely have a side bet with Cruz taking it by points. It's not that he couldn't get a good punch or get a choke or something. It's just I've only seen him get the finish a couple times, and Marlon Vera's really tough. So if Cruz is going to get it, I see a decision, maybe even a split with this being 5 rounds. I actually think it'd be better for Cruz if this was a 3-round fight, because then Marlon maybe wouldn't have enough time to get going, and Cruz could kind of run the 3rd round if he needed to. It being 5 rounds is definitely going to make it a little bit tougher, but Cruz wants to work his way up and get another title shot. So these are the kind of guys that you got to fight.
Right.
So also on the boxing side, real quick, we have Teofimo Lopez fighting Campos. Both guys only have 1 loss. Campos has got more fights, but Teofimo's definitely the better, more explosive, more athletic fighter, higher in the rankings, looking to get back to his belts that he lost to Cambosis, who then turned around and lost him to Haney. I've seen some training videos of him working on his shoulder roll a bit more, which he used against Lomachenko really well. Unfortunately, he's like a negative 3,300 favorite. That being said, though, kind of like the boxing match I bet on last night, the Virgil Ortiz one, I think if you bet Teofimo Lopez to win by knockout, it should make those odds a little bit better. So it might be worth adding to a parlay just to boost up the cash a little bit. So on a parlay, what we're going to do is we are going to have Gabriel Benitez. We are going to have the Angela Hill fight going past 1.5. We're going to have Bruno Silva. We're going to have Azamat Mirzakhanov. And those are the ones I'm more sure of. If you need some extra picks, I described how I would go about betting on the main event, either Cruz on points or the money line on Vera, maybe Vera by finish. Perhaps taking the fight to not go the distance on Onama and Landwehr. I don't know if I'd take the under. I don't know if it'll be a 1st round finish, but hard for me to see that going the distance. And then I think there's a decent chance that Calvillo gets the best of Nunes, but that's definitely one I feel like you'd be safe taking the over on. And if your betting site will allow you, maybe add in Teofimo Lopez winning by a KO or TKO in his boxing match. That about does it for what I've got here for betting. Like I say, I think UFC 278 with Usman and Costa and Jose Aldo and all those guys, I think will provide us a little bit more for sure picks. But you only need a couple for sure's, like Lewis is going to show you guys with my parlays. And if you just keep rolling it over week after week, it's a good way to make money without having to risk too much.
You heard it from the man. If I were you guys, I'd listen. I made the mistake and didn't listen last week, and I paid the price. Now, I definitely take those picks into consideration. That about
Yeah, and we'll definitely post our results next week. We always try to let you guys know if we win or lose and let you know where we went right and where we went wrong.
right. That about does it, huh?
Yeah, that's about all I got. Like I say, I kind of feel like this next week is like the holdover. The Lopez fight's good. This Cruz and Vera main event's good, but it's the week after that that's going to be really entertaining, where we've got the Anthony Joshua and Usyk rematch, which is about as even of odds as you'll see on a big boxing fight. And then, of course, we've got the big UFC pay-per-view with Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. Also got Costa versus Rockhold, Jose Aldo versus Merab. Lot of good fights.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, this is the Fights Tonight podcast. Thank you, Travis. Thank you for your insights, and we'll see you next time.
Deuces.